coming to you today with a forecast of October from my spiritual and cosmic team who's given me all this beautiful information during my meditations and during my channelings to prepare us for October. And I want to share an image with you that I've seen, that I've had downloaded, that I think is quite powerful. So October is going to have a lot of new energies coming in. It's going to be very powerful. It's going to be, I feel like, quite disruptive and chaotic. And it all depends on where you are, because it's also going to be very allowing for integration of the energies that came in September. So there's different depths that these things are happening. And I'll explain what I mean to you now. So the image that came in to me very strongly is, if you imagine that you take a cross section out of an ocean and you imagine that you're kind of at the shore, so you see the waves at the top, right? This kind of topsy-turvy. And then below that, so think about it this way: if you've ever been surfing, or if you're like fallen underwater and close to the shore, you know that there's kind of this tumble dryer movement underneath those waves where you don't really know if you're up or down, and you're hitting the ground and all this stuff before you kind of start to realize, oh, that's up, this is where I need to get oxygen, right? It's very harsh under there. It's like a lot of movement. And then all the way down at the bottom in this cross section, obviously there's stillness. And I'm sure you've heard this analogy before, but it's going to be deeply applied to October. So if you are, and we're going to experience all of these states during October, by the way, none of us are above or below this. We're going to experience it, but you can figure out which states that you want to be in the most, and you can kind of achieve those, right? So at the top you have those waves, and that's where a lot of activity is going to be happening. There's going to be tremendous amount of things happening in your life, like just physical things, right? And if you're a surfer, let's continue with that analogy because it's helpful here. You're going to be on top of the waves. You're going to be looking for the next wave to catch. You're going to be hanging out there, looking behind you, figuring out where you're going to start to paddle. All of you surfers out there are going to relate to this. The other guys are going to be like, I don't know what she's talking about. I was a surfer for a while in my life. So anyway, it's easy for me to talk about it this way. And then once you catch that wave, you kind of feel that push, right? But first you got to pedal a lot, because you have to be at the same speed as that wave, otherwise you're going to miss it, and you have to time it also. You have to like be there and be like, okay, it's coming, paddle, and then you feel the push of that wave, you get up and you're like, I'm surfing, look at me, and you're moving with the water. You feel this power behind you, and it feels incredible, and it's a very amazing feeling. When you surf, everything around you is dynamic. Like, you're moving, the ocean is moving, and the board is moving. So it's a very dynamic sport. Most of the time, let's say you go skiing, at least the mountain is still, right? Most sports, some part of it is still. Surfing, no, everything is moving, right? So that's the energy of October. Everything's going to be moving. The water's going to be moving below you. The board is going to be moving below you, and you're going to be in movement. And you know how easy it is to fall when you're surfing? And that brings me to my next state that's going to happen this October. When you fall during surfing, you end up underneath all that action. And then the tumble dryer starts, right? You're like, the board might hit you in the head, boom, which has happened to me. And you might tumble a few times before you even realize which way is up, right? The power underneath that wave is so strong. It's just like pushing, and you're up and you're down and you're boom, and then this, and then you're trying to figure out, like, where do I get oxygen again? And then finally you get up, you catch a breath, you look over, you're like, oh, okay, the next wave is coming again, right? And then eventually you get closer to shore, you get to breathe, you get up, and you're like a little bit exhausted because your whole body had a little bit of a beating and you were fighting to get some oxygen. So maybe you say, let me rest here at the shore for a little bit before going in for the next one. Or maybe you feel so energized, like, man, I surfed. I fell over, I did, but I surfed, and like, let's go again. You go out again, you duck under the waves, you swim over, whatever you need to do in order to kind of get back out into the ocean where the action is happening again, and you catch that next wave of surf. So you see what I'm saying, right? You could choose to rest a little bit at the shore, or you could choose to go out there again. And you might catch a wave that brings you all the way into the shore also, by the way, right? And that's amazing too. So don't be afraid to try to catch that wave. Okay? Then at the bottom of the ocean, there's going to be this beautiful stillness. That's when you go when you need to recuperate. That's when you go when things around you are getting a little bit too crazy. The chaos that we're going to see in the world, the breakdown of the old systems, the action that's happening up where everybody's surfing and trying to catch the next wave. Maybe you feel like, it's a little bit too much for me today. Let me go deeper. That's when you go inside. That's when you focus on your intuition. That's when you focus on your self-work. That's when you meditate. And that's when you sit in stillness. So during this month, be aware of all of these states and where you want to be. How you feel like, okay, now it's time for me to catch another wave. Now it's time for me to slow down. And I'm also feeling okay with being in the tumble dryer, right? I know I'm going to get up and get a breath every once in a while. But that's kind of the power that's coming in October. The power of the wave, the power of the water, the power of movement. That's what I'm clearly seeing. I was going to mention something else too. Oh yes, sorry, I had to check my notes real fast. The other thing that's coming in to me, and it's so early for me now that I'm going to try my best. It's dragons. And dragons, I believe, it's like there's so synchronistic right now. The power of the dragon is coming back to us, to our awareness. You know how in the Chinese, how they have that 12-year cycle where you're born in like the year of the rat or the horse or, snake and all these things. They also have the dragon. And somebody recently said that, do you really think that they have 11 animals that exist here on Earth and one that doesn't in their wheel? Like dragons are not real, right? And that has made me start to think a lot. And I know it sounds a little fantastical and mythical and magical and maybe even crazy. But why do we have all these movies with dragons? What is that movie called? I forgot it now. How to Catch a Dragon? How to Train a Dragon. How to Train a Dragon. That's a very popular kids movie. We have dragons in so much mythology. And in all of our stories, there's many, many stories about dragons. There's old books about dragons where they actually talk about meeting them and drawing a picture of what they look like and so on and so forth. And then we have that whole dinosaur thing, right? What if some of those dinosaurs were more like dragons? So I think the power of the dragon, the kind of potency that it has, the beauty and the love that it has, is going to come back into our lives for those people that are ready. We're going to feel more and more drawn towards dragons. I also feel like because we can only see 0.01% of the visual, spectra that exists in the world, there's this potential that we actually cannot see them anymore, just like unicorns and all these other beautiful animals, right? So I feel like in October, there's going to be a strong dragon energy coming back into our world, whatever that means for you. I know Diana Cooper talks about dragons, has been doing for years. So it's definitely not something that people are not aware of, not speaking of. The people that have a high enough frequency to be able to commune and see dragons, right? So watch out if dragon starts to appear in your life. And I mean like in maybe movies, maybe celebrations, maybe, then you'll start to realize like, why do they celebrate dragons so much in the East, in China and so on? I think there's a very strong reason. I think that there is something very potential there, and I'm going to explore this topic much more, but I believe it's going to come into your life in October. So those are the two things that I wanted to share with you for October. I hope you enjoyed it, and I wish you a wonderful day. Namaste.